Hi all, this week we are talking about our reading Correcting American Corrections. This is week 7. So our agenda for the week are who exactly are the experts in this discussion. We'll talk about the major contributions of the experts and the major stances of each of these experts. This is a little bit different from previous readings where we would work through it in kind of a timeline fashion of going through the reading. This time we're talking about individual experts, and you're expected to read the reading with this enhanced knowledge of who the experts are. And then we'll talk about our discussion prompt for the week. So, who are these experts? Our first expert is Mr. Francis T. Cullen in the University of Cincinnati. He teaches in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice, and he is the author of the book Rethinking Crime and Deviance Theory. So he's definitely a guy that knows what he's talking about. His major stance in the article is that the American people's stances on law and enforcement are reasonable, and that most people realize that mass incarceration does not necessarily work. This is a pretty common stance both among criminal justice theorists and the experts in this particular reading. He also points out that the American people have always felt this way, and that public opinion has not shifted, but the way the pollsters ask the questions have shifted. So if we look at charts, he would argue that when we do see changes in the actual statistics, he would say that we're not seeing changes in opinion, but in the way that pollsters are actually asking the opinion. He also points out that politicians think that the people like prisons than they actually do. This again may be the result of some polling error, which is abundantly common among non-scientific type polls. Our next expert is Mr. David Garland. Dr. David Garland. The previous expert was a doctor as well. He teaches at New York University, where he teaches in the sociology department and the law department. He is the author of the book Particular Institution, America's Death Penalty in an Age of Abolition. Sorry, that was my dog. The major stance in this piece is that Americans do think too many people are put in prison, but on the contrary to that, many of us want to punish the people who do bad things. So us as Americans, Garland points out that we think there are way too many people in prison, but when someone breaks into our house, or when someone assaults us, or when someone steals our bike, we want those people to go to prison. Which is contradictory, but it's, that's kind of how we as humans are. He also points out that it took a long time to build the current prison system, and it will take a long time to get rid of it. Major social institutions don't just go away. For example, even in the Soviet Union, we think of the Communist Party as a thing of the past. It lost a lot of power in the 1990s, but there still actually is a strong Communist Party in modern-day Russia. Garland also points out that the prison system is obviously racist, and there are major race issues in that system. David Jacobs teaches at The Ohio State University. He teaches in the Department of Sociology. There he studies stratification and inequality, as well as political sociology and criminal justice. Jacobs' major stance is that public opinion doesn't matter much. That may sound a little, forthcoming. It may sound a little crass. I have actually met Dr. Jacobs. That's very much in the tone of how he speaks. He would just say, yeah, public opinion doesn't really matter. and it only really matters in the most intense of moral debates. What he means is public opinion doesn't matter to politicians. The only reason public opinion matters when politicians are making decisions is when they regard moral debates, when people really care about them, such as civil rights, abortion, capital punishment, those things that people get really angry about. When we're not talking about those things that people get really angry about, politicians don't really care about what we think because we're not expressing that opinion. Jacobs also points out that prisons are no longer a political issue. So, and political is spelt wrong on this slide, I just noticed. Thus, politicians have decided that it isn't strategically worthwhile to pursue prisons. That's why we're not seeing prison reform. It's not that prisons aren't terrible, it's that politicians think we don't care about prisons. And he has a pretty good point there. Finally, we have Dr. Jeremy Travis. He is the president of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I believe that's in New York City. He is the author of They All Come Back, Facing the Challenges of Prisoner Reentry, which refers to recidivism problems that we will be talking about later in this course. His major stance is that the public favors shrinking the prison system, and we could change the system if we wanted to change the system, but effectively we don't have the vision to change that yet. And such a public conversation on this issue may happen sooner rather than later. So in his timeline of how things are going to go down, of how the prison system is going to change, he will say that things are probably going to change sooner rather than later. He also states that early relapse programs may be the solution, but they should be used cautiously. That should say early release programs. So early release programs from prisons, as in letting a bunch of people out and not to lighten the load of the prison, so the lower committing criminals. Our discussion prompt is, so looking in the Correcting American Corrections readings, several experts expressed their viewpoints regarding the study in which many Americans express a preference toward releasing nonviolent inmates. So this is what the discussion is about. The experts then go on to examine why there is a strong public opinion against the prison system as it exists, and why it's unlikely to impact public policy. So in your essay, I want you to explain the arguments of each of these experts and then express your opinion on the matter. So you could tell us why you think the one expert is right and you agree with that expert, or maybe you have a completely different opinion. You could express that opinion, but again, as with all opinion pieces, back it up with evidence, and I want to see an understanding of the material, not necessarily your justification. I want to see your justification too, but showing you understand the material is more important to me. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the interruptions of my dog in the background, and good luck.